Deep breaths, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Home Park. Do you know what? There are times where you can do these reports. The Norwich City have lost games, and being balanced and offering alternative points of view and trying to dissect the game in real detail can be a really useful and beneficial experience. I feel like it's going to be quite difficult to maybe not have that balance, but certainly not to analyse the game in a really considered way, because it's hard not to react emotionally after that. It's hard not to feel really angry about that, and I think the stage that I'm at is probably just feeling really deflated, because where do you start? Six goals Norwich City conceded. It's the most they've conceded at this level since 1996, against Plymouth Argyle, I believe, possibly. I wasn't even born then, so that gives you an indication of how long it's been. And it was, insert word here, shambles, embarrassment, horrendous, woeful, abject. It was all of the above and more. It was such a disappointing, dismal display. And I've covered this football club now just over 4 years. I think it was 4 years earlier this month. I've seen some really grim performances. I saw them lose 7-0 at Chelsea, the game that essentially was the end of Daniel Farke. I've seen them get beat heavily at Manchester City. I've seen them lose games. I saw them lose 5-1 at Middlesbrough. I've seen some really dark, dismal, grim days following Norwich City around the country. This is up there with the very, very worst. Very, very worst. I think just the nature of the performance, the nature of the way it unfolded, I'd maybe throw in the element of travel as well, for everyone concerned. And it just makes it a really disappointing, dejecting afternoon for all of a Norwich persuasion. And there's mitigation. Have they got injuries? Of course they have, but they've got injuries to two forward players, and that wasn't the issue today. Let's try and talk about the game in some sort of detail. Norwich, so for the first 20 minutes or so, I would say it was a bad performance in possession. It was Norwich City being unable to use the ball, control the ball, be effective with the ball, and it very rapidly deteriorated. Plymouth going front, brilliant goal from Morgan Whittaker. Any sort of suggestion that is offside for me is redundant. What's the point of making that argument now? I don't see how that's useful to anybody, whether it was or whether it wasn't. It's totally irrelevant. It happened, and then just the wheels came off. They completely came off. It was an implosion of epic proportions, and I really dislike, and I really get irritated when people stand after football matches and go, the players gave up, or they didn't try, or whatever. But for a 5-minute period there, their heads were gone. They were not here. They were not present. If it was a boxing match, the towel would have been thrown in. They conceded 3 goals really, which made this a bad afternoon to a complete humiliation. They were booed off. I was sat up there in the press box, and I was pretty close to joining the supporters in doing that. It was an abject failure today, this performance. To call it performance is really kind. And I think what grates more than anything is this was supposed to be different. Like, Norwich have started the season well. I've said this a few times on verdicts that I've done. It was a good start, but it was just a good start. And therefore you have to back it up, and you have to prove that the levels of performance that you're hitting and that you're reaching, you've got to be able to show you can do that consistently. The problem is, when a team puts in a performance like this, it is seldom the only time they do it. It's rarely the only time they do it. And Norwich fans were promised that this season would be different, that these type of performances wouldn't crop up, because they've insulated the squad with mentality. This was not a young group on the pitch. That was the mitigation, the excuse that they had last season. This was Shane Duffy, Ben Gibson, Jack Stacey, Kenny McLean, Gabriel Sara, Christian Fashnak, Huang, who's 31. These were experienced players at this level, at every level. To put in a performance like that just beggars belief, and it should be inexcusable and unacceptable for anybody to produce that level of performance with the CVs that some of those players have. And I know they're hurting, and I know that they're angry with that performance, but to be honest with you, the last 12 months at this football club, there's been too many apologies and not near enough action. And when we reflect, and when we walk away from this ground this evening, what will matter most is not what's said now, not what's said and the reflections to this result, because fans don't want to hear it really, and neither do I. It's about action. It's about action, and you cannot keep putting in performances like this, displays like this, and expecting people to go with you. And you lose trust, you erode trust as a group of players, as a coaching team, when there's a performance like this. To as bad as it was, I think the relationship with supporters has been very fragile. It's been very positive. I thought I'm stood in the away end today, by the way, 1,600 fans, and I'll come back onto them. But there's always an expectation, a standard that is on these Norwich City players when they walk out on a football pitch. Therefore, when you produce that performance, and I would say this year alone, I'm counting the calendar year of 2023. There's been far too many of them. And actually, we stood there and it's like, when's the last time it was Middlesbrough, and it was in April, and it was under this head coach. And there are a lot of players who are involved in that team on the pitch today. And the idea was that you're meant to fix this and you're meant to change it. And yet here we are again. And yes, it's one result and it's easy to be emotional and reactive to it. But it's what it shows and what it means. And I just fear now, because this is 3 defeats in 4, and that is not necessarily the alarming statistic in this. It is this result. It's a team that has gone from looking really solid defensively, really potent up front, to whatever the hell that was. And to be honest, I know people will talk about the positives and say Adam Eder scored 2 goals, which is excellent. I'm really pleased for Adam. And I wrote a column on him this morning, and I think people have been very, very harsh on him. But to be honest, it's so easy to play at 5-0 down. So easy as a player. The pressure's off. Everyone's expecting the worst anyway. Then you begin to play. It's just not acceptable on any level. And that's where I find myself today, just in a little bit of shock and a little bit of just a little bit bemused by it, to be honest, and really fed up of it. And Norwich now are in a real state in terms of the narrative and losing control of that, because there was goodwill at the good start, and positivity and fresh faces and fresh promises, and again you get a performance like this and it just throws it all out of the window. It's a real shame. The goals they conceded were soft. Plymouth set up nicely. They were, the stats will show, Norwich had, I think, 69% possession. They didn't really do much with it. Plymouth were lethal on the counter attack. They were potent. They every time they attacked, really, they looked like scoring. And Morgan Whittaker scored a hat trick, but Norwich could not contend with their pace, their power, their ability to get in behind. It was slick. It was free flowing. Norwich didn't live with it easily. And to be frank, it could have been more, barring a couple of really good saves from Angus Gunn in the second half. I think Norwich can consider themselves quite fortunate that they've walked away from here today, losing only 6-2. If I'm being completely honest with you, and that's a really sorry statement to say. They were 5-0 down before they even scored a goal. And as I said, when you're 5-0 down, it's then easy to try. It's then easy to play. And yeah, it's. So I think if we try and zoom out and we try and look at trends, Rotherham. If you start with Rotherham, that was a really bad first half. Second half was better, but they didn't do too much to improve it. They obviously didn't improve the result. Stoke, decent first half, but I thought Stoke approached that really badly. Second half, Norwich were quite poor, but defended quite well. Wednesday evening, first half really poor. Second half, they gave it a really good go. A lot of huff and puffing, but lacked quality. Today was today. That's a concerning trend over 4 matches. The drop in performance, it's kind of done that, and then today it's just dropped off an absolute cliff and an absolute dive. And what Norwich need to do now is to try and prevent this from becoming a crisis, really. And David Wagner's team throughout his career have been pretty streaky. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. You look at what he did at Huddersfield, you look at what he did at Schalke, and sometimes that can work in your favour if you hit those runs at the right time. But it's really difficult to come back from results and performances like that. And I don't mean as individual players, but as a football club, for the reasons that I spoke about, because trust gets eroded and you lose that connection with fans, which it's been slowly building. You have one game like this and it blows out the window. And yeah, I hope on their very short plane ride home there are some real reflections about today and people's roles within it, because Norwich were as bad as I've seen for a long period of time. And the thing is, when you have defeats in the Premier League, you kind of accept it. It's part of being up there, right? And again, I really don't want this to sound like I'm being disrespectful to Plymouth, because I'm not. But when you come to places like this and you concede 6 goals and you lose in the manner that Norwich City have today, like, there's no words for that. There's no nothing you can offer as mitigation that suggests that this result is acceptable on any levels of. And as I said, to be honest, words aren't good enough at the moment, and it's going to be about responses. Maybe less so at Fulham and more so at Birmingham at Carrow next week. Because if Norwich City don't win that game, then I fear for the noise and the feeling around the club, because I think it could shift again very, very quickly. It was the thinnest of thin ice that a lot of people at this football club were on after last season. Another poor result, I think, would see this escalate pretty quickly. Let's talk about the fans. There were 1,600 here today. I thought they were absolutely tremendous. I've seen a few people asking why they were applauding at the end, and I spoke to Chris Gorham actually, and he summed it up quite nicely. And the anger was there at half time. The players were booed off. They were vilified as they went off, and quite rightly so. They were booed actually as they came on for the second half by the supporters. But to be honest, at that point, Norwich were 4-0 down. It very quickly became 5. As a fan, you process that, and by the time the full-time whistle goes, really, you're done with it. And they did get boos. There were a smattering of it. They completely deserved and warranted that reaction that they got from the supporters today. Kenny McLean said so himself. But I feel, because it was £92 for somebody to buy a coach ticket, to buy a match ticket, to come and watch this game. They've had to travel. They left at 5:30 this morning. I saw the coaches arrive just in that corner as I was sat in the press box just before 1 o'clock. There's a hell of a lot of sacrifice and craft. And look, I get it. When you commit to that, you sign, I guess, part of what you sign up for is that this can happen, is that this type of thing can happen. But it should not be acceptable to be served up a first half and actually a performance as bad as that. And what these fans did today was a testament to themselves, because they kept singing. They were louder than a lot of the home fans for portions of the second half. And again, I want to reiterate, Plymouth was superb, by the way, absolutely superb. And there's no qualms for me about the result. They executed the game plan beautifully. Stephen Schumacher's doing a wonderful job. This is a really difficult place to go, etc., etc., etc. They are a good side. But they were as good as Norwich City were bad, and obviously I'm coming at it from a Norwich City angle, so hopefully they can appreciate why I'm having to look at it through this lens rather than saying Plymouth were really good, which they were. So I hope that cleared that up. But the fans were tremendous, and they deserve a lot better than they've been served up as a whole over the last 12 months or so. And ultimately, we've had so many inquests and so many learnings off that. As I said, at the moment is action. And we move on to Fulham in midweek. And to be honest, I expect Norwich to play a lot of kids. I expect them to lose and lose quite comprehensively to a Premier League team. And it's Birmingham that matters, isn't it? Because that's the next game. That's the opportunity to try and produce a response to this. I feel really deflated after that. And I know Norwich City fans do as well. And we've got a long road to come as well. It's been very little to cheer about for fans of this football club for basically 3 years. If you expand that pre-COVID, a long time ago. And not good. Sorry. I wish I could offer and say something that was more beneficial than that, but I just feel really sad at the moment, to be honest, because they've worked so hard and they've got themselves in such a good position after a good start. But it means nothing if you produce performances like this and performances like they have done in the last few games, barring a few second halves and a few spells here and there. It's now 4 wins, 3 defeats. See some action. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to start the long journey home. Pinken.com if you can stomach it. YouTube if you can stomach it, for all the reactions to this game. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.